Good afternoon, everybody. It's very lovely to see you on this rainy afternoon. My name is David Myers. I am a member of the board of the Leonard I. Bierman Foundation, and I'm pleased to welcome you to the beginning of what promises to be a really extraordinary day, culminating with our event this evening honoring our social justice fellows as well as Steve Kerr. So I hope that you'll have the opportunity to get to hear from and then meet our fellows and then join us for the evening program as well. We couldn't be meeting in a more important moment in the history of the United States and really the world, a more tremulous moment, a more terrifying moment, a more dangerous moment. And I think there is great benefit in being in the company of committed activists and thinkers who can help us imagine, first of all, how did we get where we are, and second, how might we manage to escape the terrible predicament in which we find ourselves as a society here in the United States and around the world. This afternoon's program is devoted to hearing from the really extraordinary cohort, a new cohort of Bierman Social Justice Fellows. There are some other fellows from years past in the room, and I want to take this opportunity to acknowledge them. If they could please stand. It's so great to have you with us. Janelle, Rachel, Zahra, and Adnan. And it's really so great to welcome this new cohort of fellows who together really constitute a cadre of committed activists who can help us change the world. Our job, 22 fellows who can together help us transform the world, which is in so desperate and urgent need of repair. I'm not going to do an extended introduction. I'm going to let actually our fellows introduce themselves, but I do just want to say a word about really why we're here, which is because of the extraordinary force of personality and moral vision of Rabbi Leonard I. Bierman. How many people here knew Rabbi Bierman? Okay, well, we are Leonard's disciples. We are Leonard's scattered flock. And the good news is more are joining. And they're invigorating us. And they're guiding us. And our job is really to figure out the best ways to lend them the tools and resources to do that important work. Leonard was extraordinary in so many ways and had such moral clarity in the darkest of times. And no doubt he would have wise words for us today. I mean, today, after yesterday, he would have wise words for us. And we can go back and consult his writings and his sermons. And yet, part of the challenge that he left for us is to, in fact, pick up his mantle and carry it forward and to find our own voice. And I think that is really the extraordinary promise of this panel, who are really articulating a voice for justice that is so familiar to us from Leonard's own very resonant voice, but yet has its own register. So let us, in fact, now meet our social justice fellows, and I'll just say that, alas, we are missing one from this current cadre, Dr. Jonathan Butler, who was here for the fellows retreat yesterday. A full-day retreat was held to really help generate a sense of esprit de corps amongst the fellows. I want to thank my dear friend Jamie Rappaport, who is here. Jamie, where are you? Yay, Jamie, who facilitated the retreat, which is such a significant development moving forward for us. We start the day, and we start this very significant annual event by hearing from those who continue to walk in Leonard's path. So I'm going to begin by asking all of you really to introduce yourselves and sort of offer to us what you think is most important to know about you and where you come from, either in a physical or metaphysical sense. And I'll begin with, I think I know most everybody, I think I know everybody, but I'll begin with you, Alana, whom I know.
Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Alana Hassanen. I am from New Jersey, the wonderful state of New Jersey. And I have been living in Los Angeles for almost 10 years now. A little bit about me. I have always had a deep love for learning since I was a little girl. I wanted to be a rabbi my entire childhood. I was super connected to my Reform synagogue as a child. I loved my teachers, I loved learning with my rabbi, and I just was a curious kid. I loved being in community, and really was impacted by the value of teaching and learning in Judaism. I then, went on to college at Bennington College in Vermont, where I studied anthropology and psychology, and I started working at the local elementary school. And there I found such a close connection to what schools can be and should be. This was a really special elementary school where tons of resources were being poured in. It felt really like a community center where parents were also really present. And that developed my love for education. I then went on to teach, and I worked at a Jewish private preschool in New York City. And after a couple years, moved down to New Orleans, where I continued teaching. To say that there was a big gap between what I saw working at a private Jewish preschool and in New Orleans I can't capture it quite in words, but there was clearly so much inequity that I was not exposed to growing up with the level of privilege I had, and my drive to create equitable education spaces where children are honored, where their families are protected and supported became just a lot more important to me. And then I moved out to Los Angeles, and Trump got elected for his first presidency, and I was immediately activated as an organizer. I was spending the few days of the No Muslim ban sleeping overnight at LAX, was really activated by the BLM movement and participating in that. And it just became very clear to me that the issues that impact my students in school were beyond the school building. And in many ways, what was happening at school that wasn't in terms of it being overly punitive with students, unsupportive of families, I felt like that was connected to what I was seeing out in the community, and that this fight was the same. So I started organizing, and then in 2021, when Gaza was under attack, I got activated at that time to start organizing around the issue of Palestinian liberation. And now I find myself trying to understand how I can support and advocate from within the system of education around not further discriminating, marginalizing students in education.
Thank you. And just your advocacy on behalf of Palestinian liberation, where does that come from?
I will say that a lot of it actually comes, unfortunately, from not being taught an honest history about Palestinians and feeling a lot of complex feelings around that honest education and equipping children, young Jewish children, with truth is actually a core part of safety, is knowing what's happening and what has happened. And so I also, I have a mixed identity. My father's side of the family is of Egyptian Muslim lineage, and my mother's of Ashkenazi Jewish. They met in the Twin Towers in the 80s working together, and here I am. And I feel like all the people are on the land are connected. I feel connected to them, and I care about them. Palestinians are my ancestral neighbors, and I really but besides the personal connection, it's just an issue that is deeply impacting me as a Jewish person and my community. And the times are changing, so I think it's time to be with the change.
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge that really important generational transition that's underway, especially with respect to, I mean, you're involved in the realm of education. In terms of Jewish education, you know, what we bequeath to our children, my generation, you know, isn't ringing true. And there's a really necessary coming to terms with the story that was told, the narrative that was conveyed about where moral virtue lies in Israel-Palestine. And your generation is engaged in that really hard work of crafting a different narrative, one based on a much more robust principle of equality. And it's an enormously important development in certainly the construction of Jewish identity in the 21st century. And it's something that, in some sense, Leonard Bierman anticipated and would be, I think, so deeply moved by and grateful for. Okay, if you want to do, Carlos, go ahead.
Sure. Let's see here. Hello.
Hi.
Cool. So hello, everybody. My name is Carlos Alarcón. Thank you so much for having me here. A little bit about myself. I'm just a kid from San Bernardino, you know. I was born in Mexico. I came here to the States when I was 5 years old, grew up in San Bernardino, and I don't know how much y'all know about Latino households, but I'm the youngest of three, and I'm the only son, so I pretty much walked on water for a good chunk of my childhood. But yeah, grew up undocumented. Me and my siblings, we were all undocumented. And growing up, my family really told us just to keep quiet about our immigration statuses, you know, try not to speak Spanish, speak English, so that nobody kind of gets any hints. And I saw what that did to my older siblings, right? They didn't really advocate for themselves. They really stayed in the shadows. And like a lot of people who are undocumented, you don't really know what that means until it's time to graduate and it's time to decide, do you want to work? Or do you want to go to school? What do you want to do, right? A lot of the times it's a decision. Back then, back when my older sister was getting ready to graduate, it was a decision between working under the table or trying some way, somehow to scrape by enough money to put yourself through college. And the counselors at the time didn't really provide any information to support her, so she just went straight to work. My middle sister, same thing. When it was time for her to graduate, the counselor told her, I mean, you can go to school, but you're not going to get any financial aid. You have to pay it all yourself, right? So they weren't really able to advocate for themselves out of fear, right? So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be that. I'm not going to do that. So when I was growing up, I was very vocal about my status. I was very vocal about who I am. And when it was around time for me to graduate, I did my own research. I was able to find a community of other immigrant students. We were able to help each other out. I was able to get into UC Riverside for undergrad, and in there I found a community of other immigrant students, right? But once you get into these institutions, it's very clear that they love to say that you are part of these institutions, but don't love to support the students who need it once they are inside, right?
Not the UC system.
Huh? Sure. I'll talk about UCLA in a bit, don't worry. But once I was there, I really saw a lot of the same, right? It was students trying to scrape by in an institution that wasn't providing enough resources for us, right? So we ended up organizing together, ended up taking up a leadership position in our immigrant student organization. And we got into some good trouble, you know, really going to the university administrators, basically saying how the needs and resources for undocumented students are different and how our needs might be different from other students who might, you know, be citizens who are able to get student employment. They did not like to see me coming through their office doors because they knew that good trouble was coming. And that really led me to go all the way up to the University of California's Office of the President, basically telling them, like, hey, we need more resources, right? And they would always tell me, oh, we're doing the best that we can, we're supporting you all. But as I was mentioning to one of the audience members earlier, I did a finance undergrad. I know, ill, but I'm here. But what that allowed me
You'll be
to
taking
do,
us out to dinner.
what that allowed me to do was know how to read a budget, right? So I was able to tell the university administrators, hey, I love that you're saying this, but your budget doesn't back that up, right? You're saying that you support us, but you're slowly taking away money from our resources, right? And they told us, you know, there's only so much we could do. A lot of our budget comes from the state government. And I was like, okay, all right, I understand. Give me a couple months. So I was then able to connect with CBOs and nonprofits who really try to advocate for immigrant students. And through our partnership with bringing students to the Capitol and really trying to advocate, we were able to get $15 million going to undocumented student resources at the UC, CSU, and CCC levels. Amazing. Right? And that's when I saw, oh, okay, we can really get some change here if we really kind of put our money where our mouth is as students, right? Saying we want change, we need to be the ones at the forefront making that change, right? And apparently UCLA liked that, so I came to LA about 5 years ago to do a master's in public policy and continue that work, right? We were able to create along with some other fellows, we were able to create a network of students that went up and down the state of California that were pushing the envelope in terms of what an institution can do to help students, right? And I continue doing that sort of work now. Now I kind of took on a different giant, a different Goliath. Now I'm focusing on trying to make our healthcare system more equitable for our immigrant neighbors. And I mean, it's easier said than done, right? But thankfully, through the work that we've been doing, we were able to get California to be one of the first states in the nation to offer our Medicaid program. Here we like to put the name Cal in front of everything. So our Medi-Cal program, we were able to expand it to all Californians regardless of immigration status. That happened in 2024. We were able to get a lot of folks enrolled. And now we're here in 2025 where we're facing attacks to our healthcare system from both the federal government and the state government. So it's gonna be an all hands on deck situation this year, trying to fight to preserve our healthcare system and to make sure the folks that really need it are the ones who are able to receive the benefits that, that they desperately need, right? And yeah.
Amazing. So I just want to say one thing, Carlos, two things actually. The great incomparable Representative John Lewis was a winner of the Bierman Prize. And I think from that moment on, we understood that getting into good trouble was imprinted in the DNA of our foundation's very being. So we're so delighted to hear that that's continuing in your generation. But I do want to know, like, the famous 20th century Jewish scholar and theologian Abraham Joshua Heschel said we have to sort of cultivate in ourselves a sense of spiritual audacity. And I wondered, like, where did the spiritual audacity come from to say, you know, I'm not going to just keep my head low and go along and, you know, not try and get into good trouble? Like, at what point, who helped you? Like, how did you develop, you know, the chutzpah to really say, no, this is not acceptable. I'm not going to sit by passively.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's just being in community with other people that feel the same. You know, I saw that if you don't really speak up about things, you kind of get a sense that you're the only one who feels like this, right? And that's very isolating. And once I started speaking up, I saw that like other students, other colleagues felt the same way. And to be honest, we were just angry, right? And we were looking for a way to channel that anger. And thankfully, we were able to channel it into something that resulted in some positive change. But yeah, I think that's where it really stemmed from, really sharing how I felt, finding a community of folks who felt the same way, and then realizing that, oh, there's power in numbers and we can actually make some good change if we really kind of put some blood, sweat, and tears behind this, even though, you know, the people in power kept telling us, no, it's not likely, it's not gonna happen, but, you know, we're here now, you know? Members of our very own community said that we weren't going to be able to expand our Medi-Cal program, and look at where we're at now, right? So that's really where it came from.
Okay, thank you so much. Before we move to the next person, whom I will be delighted to present, I just want to remind you that there's a fifth member of this cohort, Dr. Jonathan Butler, a health sociologist doing incredible work in San Francisco, who has a second calling and vocation as a Baptist minister, and he is giving a sermon this morning, his first sermon of the new year, and had to be there for that, but he'll be with us this evening. So we look forward to hearing his really remarkable story as well. Without further ado, my dear friend and brother Mohsen.
You struggled with this, I understand why now. I would start, I'm feeling emotional, and I want to share with you where my emotions are coming from. I was communicating with myself internally, and I'm speaking to my inner child, and I'm telling him, we are at a synagogue, and we are being honored as fellows based on the legacy of a rabbi, a Jewish rabbi. Would you ever imagine that? And part of me wanted to cry, because me being here with you on the legacy of Rabbi Bierman, coming from a Palestinian refugee camp where I was born and raised, and being burned by the fire of injustice on the hands of the Israeli occupation, you can feel it. So this is the energy of light, of healing, of hope. And I want to extend this gratitude to you, because I would imagine that everyone who's here has done serious work of healing, considering the pain, the trauma, and the horror of the Holocaust and anti-Semitism that has not been far from now. So we are in a healing circle, continuing the work that Rabbi Bierman has started. So who's this little kid who I am speaking about? I was born and raised in a refugee camp in the West Bank called Al-Fara, as a third generation, 63 acres with more than 10,000 people there. I lived as, part of the mercy of life, I call it, that you don't know how miserable your life when you are a child, until the second intifada or the uprising took place. I was 10 years old at that time. And the way how it affected that child, it was a very painful process. I witnessed the killing, the murder of my best friend from childhood, who was 14 years old, Hameda, in front of my eyes. I witnessed the body of my uncle, who was saturated in blood. I was shot when I was 15. I collected people's body parts when I was 12 years old and put them in plastic bags. And regardless of the reasoning and the justification, no child should live a life like that. So my experience and my understanding about Judaism came from that interaction that I had with the Israeli army in the refugee camp. And my life did not take a transition, my understanding fully, until I came to America in 2014. I continued my life. I honored the life of my uncle, who always advised me to continue my education and to focus on my education. He said, we lost everything but our minds and souls. And we have to invest in our minds and return to our people. And that's what got me through it to get to the university Birzeit first in Palestine, and then I came to America in 2014. But that journey in America was a life-changing journey, because for the first time in my life, I was able to connect with Jewish people and Israeli people as human beings around dining tables rather than military uniforms. For the first time in my life, I was able to hear about the stories and the pain and the hope and the aspiration. And for the first time of my life, I was able to discover and to share that what we have in common is way more than what divides us. And that brought me to a moment where I don't know how it came out of me, but I said, the human being is not an enemy. The human being is not an enemy. If there is an enemy, it is fear, it is segregation, and it is ignorance. And that innate understanding came from the human connection that we have right here, and that Rabbi Bierman has had in the land there with Palestinians and Israelis. And early on, I was mentored by Jewish intellectuals who became friends. And in fact, I have to acknowledge that one of my dearest friends and mentors from New Hampshire, Dr. David Bisno, is here. And he was the first to open the stage for me to give my first talk in the United States. And since then, I have been going on many tours, talking to many communities and many Jewish communities, where before October 7th, I've given more than 100 talks just because this opportunity and this mentorship. So I started seeing different perspectives, and I learned also most of the Jewish communities who I was connecting with, and American, Christian, and other communities, they had very little understanding about my side of the story, the Palestinian side. And I felt it's an obligation not to advocate for my people, but an obligation to show how much we have in common and how much hope there is to see the different angles of the truth. So moving forth, I ended up resuming my education. I went to Columbia University, continued building ties and connection with Jewish and Israeli communities on the hope to see a future beyond what is there right now or what was there before October 7th. And it was already painful. October 7th happened. I reached out to many of the people who I connected with. I've been to Chabads, I've been to Hilals, to many Shabbats, and I built a movement. I built a coalition at Columbia University that ended up carrying the pro-Palestine movement in America. And I apologize for some of you who have seen it as provocative, as painful. And I think there is a lot of truths that we can uncover when we have time about what happened and how the media depicted that. But we had Jewish organizations and partners who were part of it. And there were also Jewish and Israeli organizations and partners who were so triggered that they could not come into this coalition. So now I after roughly a year from that time, President Trump gets elected. Before the encampments, I take a step back from the movement. When President Trump was elected, he declares that those who were activists at the universities will be detained or deported. And even though I was in America by that time for more than 10 years, on a green card, abided by the law, respected the law, paid taxes, went to the best educational institutions, the administration ended up inviting me to my citizenship interview in April of 2024. And during my citizenship interview, instead of walking out with a citizenship, I walked out handcuffed and taken into prison. It was a shocking moment for so many people, and many people who I am connected with, and my brother and friend, David Myers, also, who advocated for me big time, which I am so grateful, and many Jewish communities, including Dr. David, and all of those who I worked with, they said, this is a guy who works on dialogue. This is a guy who works for peace. This is a peace activist. How could you do that? And many articles were published about my time. Gratefully, I feel so grateful because the judge, after 16 days, I was the last student activist who was detained and the first to be released after 16 days, and the judge acknowledged when he ruled, and he gave me, I was released on a bail order, so the legal battle is still going. But he acknowledged and he said a lot of declaration letters, more than 130 declaration letters, were submitted to the court, and he said many of those declaration letters came from Jewish intellectuals and communities who've known him for so many years. And the Trump administration tried to weaponize my activism for peace, for human rights, and use it as anti-Semitism. So if there is a light and if there is hope, it's also your level of awareness that you did not fall into the traps that the government is trying to put in place. So 2 weeks after my release, well, when I was released, I shared one statement that many considered very provocative, and it went viral on so many medias internationally. And I said to President Trump and his cabinet, I am not afraid of you. And I said that because they are trying to weaponize fear. And the moment we break through fear, we know our truths, we come closer to each other, and we have better imagination, and we are interactive and rather than reactive. And I think that is the legacy that we are trying to honor today. So what am I doing in my life? I graduated from Columbia after 2 weeks of being released. I am now studying and doing a master's degree at Columbia in International Affairs, focusing on peacemaking and conflict resolution. I built a non-profit, which we call Just Peace, Amen, which is Alliance for Movement, Empowerment, and Nonviolence. And we are building basically and preparing for something much larger, which is the restoration of human rights, the reformation of international law, and sustaining a movement for justice that's coming from a place of love, not fear, from a place of compassion, not hate, from a place of empathy, not anger. Thank you.
That's all you have. So I just want to ask one question quickly so we can get to Nadav. One of the core teachings of Rabbi Bierman was the doctrine of nonviolence. You witnessed much violence in your young years. You, as we were talking on the way up, were in some sense drawn to violence. And yet at a certain point, you made a decision to embark on the path of a deep, lifelong commitment to nonviolence. Can you tell us how that came about, relatively briefly?
It's a journey. The journey is a journey of love and healing. The initial conditions have to be met. I came when I was 24 years old to America for the first time in my life. I feel a sense of safety. Never felt safety before in Palestine, in the West Bank. So I had a level of safety where I lived in Vermont, and I had a community that was very kind, very compassionate, very supporting of me. And I felt welcomed into the community to the point that I went through a trauma healing, trauma therapy. And the trauma therapy has allowed me to sit with my inner child, to hold him in my arms while I am communicating, and to process the pain and the loss and the fear and the trauma. So if it's processed, I'm coming to this world from a place of love. But I couldn't have done it without a trauma therapist. I couldn't have done it most likely without being in America in a loving community and safe space. And I couldn't have done it if I have not been exposed to the philosophies and thoughts of great leaders. For example, I learned from Gandhi, big time, the power of nonviolence, that the truth has its own power. And that's why we don't need to use violence. And I learned that I was enslaved before to the act of harm that were done to me. I was imprisoned, reactive to that event. And the moment I was able to process it and get out of it, that is the sense of freedom and liberation. And I believe that Rabbi Bierman has discovered that, not in theory. He went to the land, he participated in some of the actions there, and he came on the other side. He came out of a practice, and he said, my way is the way through peace, through love, through compassion, and through justice.
Thank you, Mohsen. Nadav.
You gave me a hard job. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name's Nadav David. I want to start with 3 anecdotes to give you a sense of who I am. So the first one is 78 years ago, on January 5th, 1948. The Haganah, the Jewish Israeli militia, bombs a hotel in Katamon, a neighborhood in Jerusalem, and kills 24 people, leading to the ethnic cleansing of most, if not all, Palestinian Christians from that historically Palestinian neighborhood. Katamon is the neighborhood that I was born in. I'm a dual citizen of Israel and the US, and it very much shapes who I am. Second anecdote, also January 1948, is in Baghdad, the Al-Watab uprisings. There are uprisings of people across Baghdad to challenge the role of the British in colonizing Iraq and in influencing the Iraqi government and influencing people's lives. And I share that anecdote because 3 years later, my family would leave Iraq, pushed out by the forces of British colonialism, by anti-Semitism, by the pull towards the Zionist project. The third anecdote is in New York City. My 2 wonderful grandparents, Shulamit and Abe Gittleson, are students at the Public University of New York, CUNY, studying education, and go on to be well-renowned Jewish educators and very loving grandparents. I share those 3 anecdotes because they're all reasons that I'm here today. As I said, I was born in Jerusalem to a multi-ethnic family, a cross-class family. My dad's family was from Baghdad, Jewish. My mom's family, also Jewish, from Poland and Belarus, and came to the US in the early 1900s. And their marriage was kind of a big deal because my dad has 9 siblings, and he's the only one that married a non-Mizrahi or non-Arab Jew, so an Ashkenazi Jew. He's also the only one that's lived in the US. So I have over 30 cousins in Israel, many of whom are my age, many of whom have served in the IDF in the last 2 years. So these are parts of my story that very much shape how I come to this conversation, and also I try to offer as much love and compassion and understanding to my ancestors and to my present family as much as I can, even as I bring these critiques that are hard for them to hear. So I offer all of that so you all know what grounds my organizing and my commitment to liberation for all people. A little bit about where I am now. I moved to LA 2 years ago. I grew up in the Bay Area where I moved when I was 5, and I lived in Boston for 12 years, where I cut my teeth as an organizer. And many of the people who shaped my political journey happen to be women, to no surprise. Shout out to my sister Michal, who's in the room, who very much has shaped my political journey. Many other friends and mentors. And I share them because there's a tradition when we're doing learning and teaching that we dedicate our learning to someone. So I dedicate everything that I'm hearing and learning today, and that I hope you all learn, to my teachers and mentors and guiding lights in my political work. So I grew up very deeply in Jewish communities. I did every Jewish program you've ever heard of, USY, March of the Living, Ramah, day school. My parents really gave me all the opportunities to deeply love my Judaism, which I do wholeheartedly. And they also gave me an opportunity to see a different way through it. I shared a story yesterday at a retreat that I went on the March of the Living when I was 17, which is a trip that takes Jewish teens to Poland and then to Israel. And I had a very emotional week in Poland, seeing the camps and learning more about the Nazi Holocaust, and also about Jews who were returning to Poland or building life there. And I landed at the Tel Aviv airport, and as soon as I landed, I had this really weird feeling in my stomach. And I said to a friend who has now taken a very different path, I said to them, there's something just feels off here. I feel like we're being sold something, and I can't exactly explain what it is or what's wrong, but this just feels off to me. And we would go on to spend the next week traveling around. And I think that moment was an opening that I didn't really walk into until several years later when I was a student at Northeastern University. I was also a finance major like Carlos, which is funny because I now work for an organization that's trying to build a world beyond capitalism, which is a small feat. But we're gonna do it. It's gonna happen in our lifetimes or the next. And yeah, a few years into school, I took a course on Jewish history and peoplehood, and it led me to interview my dad about his experience growing up as a Iraqi Jew in South Tel Aviv in Shkunat HaTikva. And for whatever reason, he opened his heart to me in a way that he hadn't before, and shared stories of police violence. He shared a story when he was 13 that the Israeli police picked up several of his friends and accused him of stealing a car or stealing a bike. And his parents, neither of whom spoke Hebrew, they spoke Arabic almost all their lives, couldn't come and pick him up. And that story really stuck with me because he told it to me in 2014 when the Black Lives Matter movement of that time was taking off, and I just started to see the connections between my own family's experience and that of Black people in the US and around the world. And I walked full-heartedly into that door with a lot of support and a lot of love, and the last 10 or so years have been a process of unlearning and relearning and believing that a different world is not only possible, it's absolutely necessary, and every day is a chance to actualize the world that we need on our own, but also with each other and in community. So excited to be here and grateful for this honor.
Thank you. So we find ourselves in just an extraordinary moment, as I said at the outset, and if we just sort of think of what's happened in the last week, we can kind of just pause for a moment to try and take stock. On one hand, apropos the aspiration to imagine a world beyond capitalism, New York City elected and inaugurated a democratic socialist as mayor. Someone who speaks the voice of your generation, and really marks a significant, maybe completely life-altering transformation in American politics. Yesterday, the United States invaded Venezuela and apprehended its president, Nicolas Maduro. And you have these bookmarks, these two events within a week, marking out sort of the horizons of hope and the limits of political change. And I'm wondering what each of you thinks about what the most urgent moral task is in this moment. This moment marked by these two really significant events. And whether you think that the example of Leonard Bierman has anything to teach us about how we might act in this moment. So I'll open to anyone who would like to answer. I knew my friend would be the first.
It's a very dangerous moment. Like historically, if we look at what the US has done in Venezuela by bombing the capital and basically kidnapping the president, regardless of what our concern and our reservation about him, this is an act of war, and it is an act that is in violation with international law. Now, what we see happening right now, it's part of a much larger plan, and the plan is that the plan aims to destroy the international order, to destroy international law, and to dictate based on those who have power. They can dictate what justice is. So there is no objective for justice. Human rights would be dismissed and disregarded, and international law would be trashed. It's very dangerous for the future of humanity, because there is nothing as sacred that brings all spiritualities and ethics, good ethics, together as much as the body of human rights and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And they are literally going after that to basically disregard it, and basically for what? For material gain. Now, the other challenge with this is it's not too far away from the US. This is a distraction as well from the internal politics that is taking place right here in this country to be able to achieve Project 2025. And the Project 2025 is a project of supremacy. They declare certain framework for who is an American, and everybody else should have less rights than what the government declares. So they are trying also to destroy the legacy of many generations, the legacy of the civil rights movement, the legacy of the anti-Vietnam movement, the legacy of the Black Lives Matters, the legacy of the Me Too movement and the LGBTQ, and it's going to affect everyone who is not in line with the government. And that's a danger not only to this country, but a danger to the rest of our humanity.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're spot on everything you said. The question also sort of invited you to think about what you're going to do. So you began, the first grave danger was the destruction of the international order, which is quite intentional. It's been declared, without apology. We intend to destroy that post-World War II international order, which includes the regime of human rights. Just Peace is committed to rehabilitating the project of human rights. So just tell us how you plan to go about that. I mean, is it really reversing the vector of change from top down to bottom up? Is it a bottom up project of reimagining what human rights can look like in the 21st century?
Yeah, that is exactly right. So a theory of change that we're talking about how can we face such danger? The first element that I deem to be very necessary and important is to not surrender and submit to fear. Because fear is the tool that the powerful is trying to use, intimidating you, putting you in a state of survival, and limiting your ability to imagine and to create a better future. But also fear is a tool to divide people. And that's what the government is trying to do among many different communities, citizens and immigrants, Jews and Palestinians, white and black, Democrats and Republicans. So the idea is to center ourselves and to understand our emotions and to come to the world from a place of love, not a place of fear, and to build unity. Because as Carlos has shared, if we have community around us, we can speak up, and we can speak up loudly. And courage is infectious, usually. And the other one is education, because there is a lot of manipulation of information, so we must not only try to fix any disputes or any disagreements or conflict between people to bring them together, but also we have to bring compassionate education to many communities in order to be able to build this unity in the face of such tyrant, authoritarian government.
Yeah, I just want to sort of remark that so much of your political agenda and theory of change come from the spiritual and psychological centering that you spoke about. We can talk more about that maybe later, but Carlos, tell us about this moment and what it kind of calls out to you to do.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen right now in this moment, and maybe a lot of the audience members here can resonate with it, is that right now we are in a place where our very existence is a form of resistance, right? Like us being here, us being in spaces and sharing our thoughts that are contrary to what the current administration wants us to think, wants us to share, right? Is really what I see right now as pivotal, right? As Mohsen said, not giving into fear, right? Because once we do give into fear, once we begin to doubt, that's when the other side wins, right? So staying together, being in community and standing up and saying, hey, what the world, and by the world, I mean what the administration is trying to kind of push down our throats as being normal isn't normal, right? And we cannot let them win, and we need to stay together, fight back in whatever way that people are comfortable fighting, right? And in the work that I've done over the past decade, it's clear that people want to fight back, but maybe people want to fight back in whatever level is comfortable for them, and that is perfectly okay, because we need people to stand up in every which way that they can, whether it be being in spaces like these, whether it being in front of a camera, whether it being in a protest, whether it be in Sacramento, in DC, or whether it be simply reposting something on social media, or maybe having an uncomfortable situation with a family relative, right? Whatever sort of battle you want to participate in, that's what really I think will build towards victory.
Okay, I'm going to push you a little bit on that. Okay. That seems like the necessary condition, kind of the defensive posture, right? This is what we can do now in the face of this grave assault, really the kind of state-sponsored lawlessness that we see that is so confounding, vexing, we don't yet have a clearer strategy to figure it out. So, just talking about, our shared objections is a form of resistance. What's the larger constructive agenda that you see for, when tomorrow comes and the prospect for rebuilding, for reimagining occurs? When we don't have a regime that, engages in sort of this kind of illegal act of kidnapping and, the completely illegal acts of deportation and violation of any meaningful notions of the rule of law or due process. Where do you want to take us where would you like to move us to? What is that? Give us a sense of what that society looks like.
For me, where I would like us to be is a place where one's background, one's birthplace doesn't dictate their ability to thrive in life, right? Right now, I think a lot of us are fighting just to survive, but I think getting to a place where we're able to thrive is actually where we need to be. And if we're able to have conversations and we're able to have policies that don't really rely on somebody's birthplace, on somebody's background, really, just to receive services that they're already paying for, but for some reason, because of where they were born, they don't have access to, right? That's where I would like us to be.
It's just so interesting to chronicle. Reading the paper today, I was just so struck by the starkness of these two visions of what the United States is. Like the United States as this remarkable mosaic that has so benefited, been constituted at its core by immigrants, and a vision of the United States without immigrants. I mean, the starkness couldn't be clearer. These are two visions, and one seems profoundly unsustainable, not just morally objectionable, but unsustainable. And you're pushing towards not just the restoration, but really the reimagination of what that mosaic can look like. Yeah. Okay, Alana. You want to use it?
Yeah, I'll use mine. If I can take it out, I'll just leave it here.
Oh, just use this one. I'll take it out. Just use this one. I'll struggle with this.
Yeah, okay. Well, the first thing that came to mind when you asked that question was AB 715, which is an education bill that's been passed in California. It is an attempt to address anti-Semitism in the public school system in California by creating conditions where there's more monitoring, easier opportunities for parents to send complaints and appeals up to the top to what is called an Office of Civil Rights. Governor Newsom will be appointing an anti-Semitism coordinator who will be managing the cases that come in and tracking this. And I can't help but feel terribly uncomfortable with this, as I also watch the ADL develop a Mamdani monitor where we're going to be tracking Mamdani's anti-Semitism, which I personally haven't seen yet. And I'm very concerned. I'm very concerned about the level of silencing, the fear. I mean, the reason I love education is teachers will keep teaching. If something needs to be taught, they'll teach. But there's also the reality that teachers will be in fear of having honest conversations in classrooms where we have Palestinian children in our school districts who deserve to feel like their history can be spoken about in their present conditions. Students deserve to learn honestly about what's going on. And I'm just thinking to myself, what conditions are we setting our students and teachers up for to have a successful education and for children to come equipped into the world about each other, which is a huge part of safety. Why are we not teaching dialogue? Why is everything being turned into, you can file a complaint, instead of let's talk? Where are we giving teachers the 21st century skills to manage this incredibly challenging time and probably increase their salary while we're at it, if we're gonna ask that of them? Thank you. And my personal concern is that we're kind of going in two directions. We're either gonna support the development of democracy and the ways that it needs to rebirth or be brand new, or we're going to be a part of the authoritarianism and the silencing that's occurring. And I think we really need to figure this out sooner than later, because AB 715 is going to be replicated in other states. There will be repercussions for this. And as a Jewish woman, I have a lot of fear around that for myself, my future children, and most importantly, Palestinian students deserve to be comfortable in our public school education, period. And that's that.
Right, so there are many levels. There are Palestinian students, there are Jewish students with diverse opinions, there's the culture of the classroom and encouraging a stimulating environment in which dialogue is part and parcel of the educational process. And then the consequences you've just said for the very idea of democracy itself. This is not simply confined to how we talk about Israel-Palestine and not merely to the dynamics of the classroom. It's about the very essence of democracy, which is so endangered at this point. Nadav, tell us how you see this moment.
I'll go on my shtick about imagination. Okay, I think the greatest crisis is our inability to imagine a completely transformed world and system. So just a thought exercise for a moment. Think about a time where you felt a sense of safety. Okay? Who was around you? What could you hear? What could you smell? What could you see? I'm guessing that no one in this room, or maybe there's a few of you and I'd love to talk to you, had a vision of a police officer or an armed guard in that visual with you. I might be wrong, and I would be so happy to hear. But I think that we're living in a reality now, especially under this authoritarianism, where we are told that all we can fight for is crumbs. We can fight for affordable housing when we've seen people dying on our streets because we have vacant homes that are owned by billionaires and private companies. We see thousands of people detained and deported from LA County every single day, over the course of many months, with an unwillingness to recognize that the funding for the Department of Homeland Security has been increasing every single administration, Democratic and Republican. We spend millions of dollars in Jewish communities to hire police officers, to hire armed guards, and it's not getting us any safer. So to me, the crisis that we're dealing with is a crisis of believing and actualizing a different world and being told over and over again, let's just get through these Trump years and then we'll be good to go. And more people will die on our streets, more people will be deported and there will be no news about it, more people will be kicked out of their housing. So what I'm offering to you all is that the more they take away our imagination, the less we're able to actually make the level of transformative change that we need, and that is so necessary now more than ever, but will be necessary in 2 years and 4 years and beyond. And that's true also around Palestine, Israel, right? It's so important that the supposed ceasefire has happened, but hundreds of people are still being killed in Gaza and across the West Bank. And we, again, are just told over and over again, this is the best we can offer you. And the systems just continue to entrench themselves. People continue to be incarcerated, deported, and die on the streets. So that's what I'd offer you.
So I would say if you're feeling comfortable at this point, you're in the wrong conversation. This is what the prophetic voice that Leonard so deeply imbibed was intended to do, to afflict the comforted and comfort the afflicted. And I think we've really heard from our panelists the imperative to disrupt and upend and refuse to accept the status quo in many different domains, from San Bernardino to Israel-Palestine. I want to conclude before we open up for your questions and comments. We'll have about 15 minutes for that, with a final question about wherein lies hope for you. And we'll try and just do it in lightning fashion so we get through everybody on the panel, and then we can take your questions and comments. So who would like to begin on that?
What's giving me hope right now is that there are more people who want to be together than not. It's more intersectional, our movements now than ever. We don't want winners and losers in our systems. We want our systems to change so that everyone can feel safe and win and be educated and taken care of and have their needs met. And our responsibility in this hopeful moment that a lot of young people are bringing is to create those conditions where they can live in that way, where they can be educated in the ways that they want to be and see each other. They want to expand the table. It's our job to support children in that process.
Hope, Carlos.
What's giving me hope is the amount of people I'm seeing being activated now. I am meeting with students, law students, med students who want to advocate, who want to be part of the movement, saying what's happening now is not okay, and I want to contribute to the movement to help it, to redirect it in a better place, right? I'm also meeting with up and down the state of California, lawyers, physicians, nurses, community health workers who have had it, who are angry and want to channel that anger into advocacy, into fighting back in whatever level that they're comfortable with. And that brings me hope, right? Knowing that, like, I'm not alone in this, we're not alone in this fight, and everybody wants to come together to ensure that our humanity is being upheld.
Great, thank you. And I just want to say, one of the reasons we hold this symposium is so that people out in the community can be exposed to the work you're doing. They can talk to you about it, and they can find ways to support you in your work. So please know that that's really encouraged. And after we conclude, please feel free to talk to our panelists about the incredible work they're doing. Austin, Hope.
I find hope in many different dimensions. I find hope that somebody who passed away, his legacy and thoughts and light and hope is still with us. And we draw on that from Rabbi Bierman, we draw on that from Nelson Mandela, we draw on that from MLK, from Gandhi, from Jesus, from Buddha, and so on. And what gives me most hope nowadays, the level of awareness and consciousness that we are seeing all over the world. For the first time in the human history, we have this level of connection, and some would argue that there is a split, a divide, yes, but it's never been, we've never been this connected and united before, one. Two, the amount of information and experiences that's being shared all across the globe within seconds is very high. And the three, that we are connected, that if somebody is in pain in Palestine or Israel, or if somebody is in pain in Venezuela, we can see it and we can empathize, or we are coded to empathize with each other. So where is the hope coming from? The hope is coming from the moment we have a model, a small model, we call it exemplar sometimes, a group of people. Many will follow. I see hope in New York City. I see hope with the Jewish communities that are standing up and speaking up and doing the processing and the healing that is much needed. And I see hope in our ability to organize, to stay connected, and to not be intimidated. Because when you let go of fear, the truth will appear. So simple, so clear. This is our way.
I can't be on a panel without quoting my teacher, Miriam Kaba, who says, hope is a discipline. Hope is not optimism. It's not just the idea that things are going to get better. It's a choice we make every single day to choose life, to choose dignity for ourselves and for all people. And where I see the most hope right now is communities who are fighting back in real time and bringing new models, new experiments into being. So right here in LA, there's incredible rapid response networks that have built out entire infrastructure in the last year with hundreds and hundreds of people engaged all across the city. And they're responding to horrifying things that happen every day that are not on the news. But they're also building a new way and an old way, bringing back an old way of being in community and relying on each other and fighting for what we need and not being scared to go up against the systems that we're up against. You know, we can't, and I think I want to offer that energy to us Jews and to the Jewish communities. Many of our institutions who have the most power in the US are using anti-Semitism to do horrifying things, and we cannot just let that happen. We have to speak out against the ADL and the others who are doing this, because it's putting us all at risk. And there's a very, very different way with lots and lots of examples. So I'll just put a pitch very quickly in for a project I just completed called the Community Safety Guide. We spent 3 years researching examples of alternatives to policing and private security, and have examples from all over the US and all over the world to help inform Jewish communities to make different choices. And I have some guides here if you'd like one.
Okay, so we're going to open up now to any questions or comments that you have. And if not, I have more questions to ask our panel. So let me know. I'm going to play Phil Donahue here. That's a generation-specific reference. Come right over to Alana here, making my way. Yes, introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alana Weimer. I'm a PhD student, partially working under Dr. David Myers. And I have a question for all the panelists, and especially for Nadav. There's an abolitionist concept of 1 million experiments that are needed to build a new world. And I'd love to hear you talk about that concept, and if you've ever seen a glimmer of the world that you're envisioning through one of these experiments that you've conducted.
Okay, so thank you, Alana. So this idea comes from the same teacher I mentioned earlier, Miriam Kaba. Definitely read her work if you don't know her already. But the idea is that we're so often told that there's going to be one leader, one project, one organization that's going to solve all our problems and just arrive, and we're all going to be good to go. And what she offers is that we actually need experiments in what it looks like to do things differently, and what it looks like to prioritize care and community and looking out for one another as a way to practice with the world that we're moving into, that will come, that'll arrive. And I think what's useful about this is it gets us out of the thinking of there being one solution, and instead thinking about what are the million solutions that we're experimenting with, that we learn from, that we revise and shape as we respond to what's coming at us and as we build the new world.
Great. Okay. Yes. Just introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Shelley Steyer, and I have a question for all of you. Are you familiar with the book that David wrote, The Eternal Dissonant?
We read from it yesterday.
Excellent, excellent. There is a phrase in there that has resonated with me for the longest time. I've read it twice, and all of you exemplify it. Jewish consciousness.
Jewish consciousness, or we might even say the eternal dissident. I'm wondering if that is a phrase that resonates with you. I'm wondering, actually, if there's something in Rabbi Bierman's teachings that you noticed that really spoke to you and sort of helped formulate your own sense of commitment to social justice work. Alana, you're nodding your head, so I'm going to say.
Yeah, I'm thinking about what Mohsen's been saying about moving from a place of love, and I really see that that he was an example of that. Something I feel like I have to always explain and fight for is like, I love us, I'm not working against us, I am with us, and I need to advocate for the people that are being harmed, killed, brutalized, traumatized in this time. And to me, this is like such a complex, it's a real problem that we can't advocate and also feel like we are loving and holding our people at the same time, but we are. That is why I'm so excited about the young people, because they're not going to compromise their concern for Palestinian lives or for Jewish lives in that work specifically. And what I love about his work is that he made very clear, I'm going to speak up, I'm going to advocate, and I'm here for us. This is, I'm with you, right? I'm with our community, so.
You have homed in on, I think, one of the key teachings of Rabbi Bierman. It's precisely that ability and that moral imperative to balance love and fierce, unrelenting critique of injustice. Like, how can you do that? And you phrased it that way. How could? It's an exercise. It's not a completed mission. It's an ongoing process of recalibration. But that's exactly what he represented: is that lifelong struggle to find the equipoise between those two impulses, right? And you've just homed in on it exactly, Mohsen.
I was very touched by the work of Rabbi Bierman, and the most significant teaching that has touched me deeply, that his moral clarity from early on, his moral clarity came through 1948, I believe, with his participation partially for a very short period with the Haganah.
Yeah.
But he came so clear in his heart that violence is not my way, and my way is to bring justice, and what's happening there is unjust. 1967, I learned yesterday I believe from Judith, that he held events here, was educating 1967 about Palestinians and Palestinian rights and collecting donations and going to support Palestinians. 2014, he warned, he prophesied about this moment, in fact. In 2014, he said, what we are witnessing in Gaza is on the verge of a moral collapse for our faith and tradition. And this is what's happening is very dangerous. 2014, and through those years, from 48 to the time that he passed away, he did not surrender to intimidation. He did not succumb to criticism, and he stayed so true to his values and to his beliefs that if he's actually in spirit, he's with us, that if he was with us today, all of us would tell him, you were right. And many people who couldn't see and understand what he was talking about would say, you are right. So this strong moral commitment to justice and to peace and to human rights, and what's happening now is also urging us, it's not over yet. There are about 5 million Palestinians between the river and the sea who are being treated unequally, living under, and I'm sorry if the words are triggering to some people here, an apartheid system, and it's difficult for some of you to hear it, maybe, but we have to sit with difficult truths. An apartheid system in the West Bank and a genocide that is not completely over in Gaza, that urge us to really stand up and carry the torch, the legacy, the strength, the courage of Rabbi Bierman, because if we don't do that, the results will be disastrous for everyone.
I just want to say, how many of you were here on October 4th, 2014 for Leonard's last sermon? Yeah, so many of the people in this room were actually here and heard those words and heard that prophecy and heard his fierceness and unrelenting commitment. And we have to ask ourselves how we got here 10 years later. We'll talk more about that this evening. Final word.
Yeah, one of the other texts we read from Rabbi Bierman yesterday was about doubt and the importance of doubt and being in leadership, and specifically, he wrote about the balancing of doubt and conviction. And we read that in tandem with his final drash on Gaza in 2014, and it brought me to the moment of October 14th, 2023, where I made the decision to go to Washington, D.C. for the very, very early protests in support of a ceasefire, carrying immense grief for my Israeli family, and having spent the last week checking in on them and sending them my love. And going there I had doubt, I had immense doubt, and also I had immense conviction because of the people that I surrounded myself with, and the very clear call for a different way forward. And it did not come easily for my family to see me there and to hear me speak out in that moment. But I think Rabbi Bierman, I wish I had read this text in 2023 to prepare myself for that moment, because I saw him and heard him so clearly in that moment.
Okay, we are unfortunately out of time, but sorry? Oh, Carlos, yeah. Yeah, final word. Thank you.
Thank you so much. No,
colleague here. Yes.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to share that in reading The Internal Dissident, it's really powerful stuff. But I am a little bit of a visual audio learner, so I went to YouTube to really hear the rabbi kind of speak. And even when he was getting a bit older, he was still very powerful, right? And one thing that kept kind of coming out at me in the different readings or the different videos that I saw was the moral responsibility that we have to each other, right, to uphold humanity and human rights, right? And that was something that I appreciated a lot and really resonated with me, and I'm sure with a lot of the other fellows in the work that we do, right? Because the work that we do, it's planting the seeds for the next generation to uphold their humanity when the time comes for them to be activated.
Well, I just have to say that I want to acknowledge the members of the Bierman Foundation Board who are here, and of course our president, Dr. Joan Bierman, and just say thank you, Joan, for getting us to this moment, Shehechianu. But I also want to say how proud we are as a foundation board of you and what you represent. And Carlos, you were talking about the seeds of the next generation. That's how we imagine you, and there's reason to hope in these darkest of times, and you really provide us with a path forward, very much in the image of Rabbi Bierman, and I just love how seriously you took the mission of connecting to Rabbi Bierman's spoken and performed words, in your case the visual, and what you really represent is that ideal of spiritual audacity, which you have inspired us to carry forth in the world. So thank you so very much for an incredible hour and a half. People should feel free to come and talk to our panelists and find out more about